welcome to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. It is Brandy, Mabra, and I'm super excited to talk about today's conversation. And so we're diving into all about AI, how to maybe lead your team through the AI transition, especially if they're hesitant or have some concerns. We're going to be diving into all of that today. So if you're looking for clarity, confidence as you lead your team, and some really great pointers on the conversations, the key conversations that you need to have, then keep listening. Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. So let me start off first with a story. So there are key moments that I've talked about where you have to get teams buy-in, where maybe there's some hesitancies, some resistance, and I want to talk about the ability for you to influence as a leader, for you to make sure that you're setting your teams up for success, even when maybe they don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. And AI is one of those conversations. So this was actually inspired from the conversations that we have inside of Private Practice CEO. And this has been a thing where we have to make a transition for AI, how to use AI tools ethically with integrity. And sometimes your team might not be on board, your leadership team, so the core team that you need to partner with you as you're rolling out things to the rest of the practice. And what do you do when you have somebody that is kind of like, I'm not feeling this, or I disagree, or I think it's unethical? How do you handle those conversations? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. There are key opportunities that have happened in my career that I think about where I've had to go through acquisitions. So this is where buying practices, I have that under my tool belt, and having to acquire a whole new team, building up a new culture. I've had experiences of where implementing changes or initiatives that sometimes were a little bit difficult, that I didn't even understand myself, but I needed to get buy-in from my team. And so influencing your team and persuading your team is actually a leadership skill. And it's not coming from a place of being dishonest. It's not coming from a place of trying to be scammy. It's coming from a place and what my approach is of authenticity. So as we go in today's episode, then we'll talk more about some ways that you can navigate change management. Your job as you're implementing AI is to make sure that you're implementing things ethically, with integrity, honesty. And there are moments where, especially with as much as people are using AI in today's time, where these conversations are happening, they need to happen inside of your practice. So as you're leading your team, your job is to be honest, to make sure that you're being in a place of authenticity, that if you don't know the answer, especially because AI is changing every single day, then say that I don't know. That's the best thing. That's the go-to. That should be a go-to for a leader. I don't know. Let me get back to you. I'm unsure. I'm scared too. I don't know. Just all of those things is where you can actually gain buy-in for the team. So what are some of the questions that we can get, or that I've been asked when it comes to AI? So for the clients that we have inside of Private Practice CEO, we spent the whole month of August. So at the time of this recording, we're in September. We spent the whole month of August talking through AI, how to get team buy-in when it comes to AI. And some folks had team members that were super excited and just embracing it. We have certain owners who are super excited about it and embracing it. And then we have other clients and owners who are kind of like, I'm not too sure about this either. So when you're leading your team, it is important for you to pay attention to your energy, because if you are coming from a place of I don't know, I think that this isn't really a good thing, and then they're going to come from a place of I don't think this is really a good thing. So I want to make sure that everybody who is hearing my voice or watching understands that AI is the future. There is no way, shape, or form that we are getting out of this. We have to embrace it. It is not going anywhere. This is not a trend. This is not fake news. This is happening. So regardless of views, I'm respecting the views. However, I would not be doing anybody any justice if I sat there and told you to ignore it or not to embrace it or not to have these key conversations with your team. If you do not have the key conversations with your team, or you're not training up your team, or you're like avoiding and ignoring it, thinking that it's going to be swept underneath the rug, then you're going to miss the shift of healthcare. And I don't know what will be for you next, is what I'll say. So there are some key things that we have to consider when you're having these conversations and just speaking from a place of how does your team feel about it? Starting there, right? Everybody's going to have their emotions. Everybody's going to come from a place of, I think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then there's going to be some folks that are kind of like, I just am not feeling it, right? And so neither of these opinions are right or wrong. But however, from a leadership standpoint, you have to understand where the resistance is coming from or the excitement is coming from. One of the key things that I've always done with any kind of change that I thought was going to be challenging or difficult or was going to be hard to navigate is I've always thought about who's my ambassador? Like, who can help spread my message? Who has buy-in, right? So when you think about your team collectively, and as we're rolling out AI, who on your team might be excited? Who on your team can you partner with? It doesn't have to just be someone who has a leadership title or somebody who is, in a certain position. So whether they're admin, whether they're clinical, whether they're a provider, it does not matter who's excited about it. Because when you partner with that person who is excited about it, they become the peer who is excited about it. They become the person, the resource that can be like, oh, let me show you this new thing. And they're the person when you're in team meetings that can talk about it. Well, this is the latest update on AI. This is what's changing. This is what's coming down the pike. And it can create easier conversations. It allows for people to put their walls down as you're implementing something that can feel very scary. Then it allows for folks to trust more of the process. It allows for people to have a safe space outside of you or outside of leadership where they can ask questions or they can venting and all the things. So when I think about key initiatives and having someone, the ambassador has always been a game changer, for me. So when we're thinking about AI and AI being the future, one of the key things that we have to think about is what is it going to do for the culture of your practice, right? Like when it comes to your business culture, then it goes back to what I was saying, where you have to be honest and transparent and recognize that this is going to be a transition for everybody. So with AI, some of the emotions that are going to be coming up with team members is, am I going to be replaced by AI? Am I going to be in a place of not having a job because all of a sudden there's now an AI agent that can maybe check people in better than me? Is it going to be where you no longer need me? And so as you're having some of these conversations, talk to how you plan to use AI inside of your practice. So there is a whole change management cycle that team members go through. And so you want to, a lot of times, and I know from my experience, I wanted to have we're going to have this one conversation. We're going to talk about this change, and then we'll never have to talk about it again in life. And that's not how it works, right? You're going to have one conversation. People are going to have questions. People's emotions are going to come into it. People might have questions later, after they process things. And your job is to just be a resource. So this is when you have the ambassador that's helpful with it, you being as clear and transparent as what your plans are for AI. When I think about AI, I see the opportunity from a profit standpoint because your team can become more efficient. They can become more effective. They can move faster. They can become more productive. And you don't necessarily have to pay them more money because they're working all these hours, right? Or you can move them on to higher level things because some of the in the weeds work can be done by AI. So for you as the owner and as the CEO, then getting very familiar with AI yourself. So that way, even as you're having some of these conversations, you can speak from a place of, this is how I think we're going to introduce it into our practice. This is what the plan of implementation is going to be. This is the first step that we're going to do. So maybe there's a certain platform that you want to start off with. And for those of you who already have, which everyone listening to this podcast does, everybody in here has a EHR and an EMR system, right? So inside of those systems, now what I do know, not everybody's on the same playing field in regards to sophistication of their EHR system and EMR system. However, there is already built in automation. There's already built in AI for some platforms. Some platforms are in process of requiring like an upgrade if you want to have more AI. Wherever you're at, then getting familiar with how you're going to use it, what are you going to bring in, what's the plan. If there is, like, you're using just the EHR and EMR, we're just going to start there, then that's part of the implementation plan. If there's other things that you're bringing in, like with ChatGPT or Claude, or there's other tools that you can bring in from a marketing standpoint, so there's Jasper AI. In the next episode, I'll actually be going through like a list of tools that you could implement inside of your practice when it comes to AI. But for now, getting the clarity for what do you want to have inside of your practice, what tools, what platforms, to make sure that everybody knows, okay, this is the tool of choice. This is what we're going to be focusing on, and this is what the implementation plan is. So I think for just in general, as you're leading through this healthcare shift, you're going to have to be more intentional with your leadership, more strategic with your leadership, be more of a visionary with your leadership, because this time is going to require it, right? Because it's always been a thing. For as long as I've been teaching and working with private practice owners, and as long as I've been in healthcare, there has always been the need to be intentional and strategic, right? There's always a need to be visionary, right? Like, where are you going? Where are you moving? We've already talked about being innovative. Now is really the time. So if you are not set up from a leadership perspective, if you are not comfortable with your skills, if you are in a place where you are struggling with your business culture, you're struggling with how to lead your team, you're struggling with just being in the weeds of your practice, you're struggling with being a firefighter, then I need for you to go ahead and to hang out with me for 5 days. Because we have the Private Practice CEO Bootcamp that is coming up in October. So it's happening October 13th through the 17th, and it's going to be amazing, amazing, amazing. So for 5 days, we're going to have real conversations about leadership. We're going to have real conversations about the healthcare shift. We're going to have real conversations about AI. We're going to have real conversations about money, what today's economy looks like, what it requires. I know that private practice owners right now are struggling. They're struggling to make sure that their practices are filled and patients are coming in, that their business cultures make sense, that, healthcare is shifting right around us, as we're moving. And even as I'm speaking, I had a call with a physician, and she was talking through like business culture, right? I had a private practice CEO masterclass, and we were talking through, how do I fill my schedules for multiple providers? It's easy to get a schedule filled for one. What do you do when you have 10? What do you do when you have 20? How do you make sure that quality makes sense, right? So some of these conversations are going to drive more towards the care that you're providing. Does it make sense? Some of these conversations are going to drive the ethics. Some of these conversations are going to drive what is really needed for today's time. And so inside of the boot camp, we're going to be having those types of conversations, deeper conversations. So if this is interesting to you, then go ahead and register today. You can see the show notes, or you can see the comments if you're watching, in order to get the information that you need. And I will love to see you there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.